the waters and cause the winds to go to a whisper. And with that, I ask you to stand, and we'll have the invocation. And Mr. Tucker has asked, he's got some words on his heart, and he will lead us. Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us all bow our heads and open our hearts. We say today, Lord, thank you. Thank you for 17 years of the United States of America continuing fighting and being sovereign and being free, allowing all of our citizens the liberties and the free access to things that America brings us. We thank you for the endurance that you've given us to continue. Now, Lord Father, I ask that you bless our colleague that sits to my right, Councilman Aldridge, that you heal him and give him the strength to overcome his illness and get back on track to join us. We pray for him and his family. And Lord Father, we pray for each man and woman that is up here and in this room, that you bless us with a sound mind and an open heart as we continue to deliberate the people's business of Kershaw County. Let the number one thing that you always tell us that is great out of all your words in the book of the Bible, and that is love. Let it pour out our pores, pour out our heart, and pour out of our souls. Lord Father, we ask these things and all blessings in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Tucker.
You're welcome, sir.
And we now move to public comments. Consigliere, do we have any comments signed up?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. One individual is signed up to speak, Dale Vanderbilt.
Thank you very much. Sir, please come on up.
I am Dale Vanderbilt. I moved here the year 2010, basically from Minnesota, roundabout through Florida. And while I was in Minnesota for 35 to 40 years, I coached for 9 years for baseball, youth baseball. We had a great program. No kid was ever left behind. Now I'm down here in Florida, and I've watched this for 10 years. And I see an inadequate program where all these kids are like oil and water, thrown into a big pile, and a few come out to play. The rest get to sit on the sidelines or play an inning, bat an inning, and sit down and throw bottles of water at each other. What do they feel like doing? And I feel this program needs to really be upgraded to a really good program. You've got plenty of kids here to do this. I've heard some of the people on the committee say, oh, we haven't got enough kids. Sure you do. There's no problem with the amount of kids. And therefore, I went ahead and typed up a program that we used in Minnesota called Majors and Minors. It's based on the professional baseball major league program. It's built off. So it's a good program. 260 people signed it, and they understand it, and they give me a lot of comments when I talk to them. They said this program has been going on for years. It's inadequate. It's unfair to all of the kids. We need a program that's fair to every kid. And this program puts majors and minor league. You have the more talented kids at the top playing in a league, and then the kids on the lower will play in another league where they have skill levels the same. This will be in 7 8-year-olds, 9 and 10s, and 11 and 12s, hopefully. In this program, you'll have a package, you all do. There's diagrams in there for you, diagrams of when I coached, so you get an idea what it's about. And also, I kind of the last minute thought so you totally understand it. Here's a major league. New York Yankees, I just use them, could be Atlanta Braves, whoever you want to put on. That's their program. There's a program you can work here, and it works for every kid. Gets to play baseball. Not gets to sit on the bench, and pretty soon I guess I'll quit playing. There's a lot of kids that do that. The program last year, they had 9 and 10-year-olds. This is based on 2018. 2017, they had one more team, one less team this year. You're going to keep losing these kids if you don't put a program together for them. We're trying to keep these kids off the street, out of mischief. And baseball is one of the programs that keeps kids interested in life, being proud of themselves. So I'm just asking you people to consider this program because it's a great program. I did it for 9 years, and no kid, no parent ever complained about it because every kid got to play on a team, actually play ball, not a show in nothing else. So I actually implore you to look at this and really recommend a good program, because it's really a good program for all the kids to play in. If you want to look at, you got this too. 0 wins, 10 losses. You see a lot of this in here. That's not a program at all. Let's get a program and get 2 different leagues where these kids can have some self-confidence in themselves. Say, I want to play ball. I'm proud of myself. Not in this situation. You'll never see it. So I implore you to look it over really close and really give it a lot of interest, because I really think they need this down here. It's a program for the kids, by the parents. The parents really want it. I have just one other thing to say. This thing is kind of being swept under the carpet a little bit. I talked to my councilman, Mr. Councilman Jones. He stepped up, and here I am today. I applaud him, and these people on here applaud him for getting this thing rolling, because it needs to get done. Did you not? I have grandkids here too, and one of them's already ready to quit. So I don't get to play. I said, let's play some catch in the yard. Well, I don't get to play. What's the sense of playing catch? Hey, I hate that attitude. Let's get it done for the kids. Okay, thank you all, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Mary, do you have his contact information?
Is it on the
Yeah,
sign-up
thank you.
sheet?
Any other sign-ups?
His contact information is on the sign-up sheet,
Yeah.
and there is no other individual signed up to speak.
Thank you very
Mr.
much
Chairman.
indeed, sir. And that concludes public comments. We move now to adoption of the agenda. Gentlemen, it's on the screen and in front of you. Can we have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved. Second.
First from Mr. Gardner, second from Mr. Tucker. Any discussion? The only thing I would say, and by way of discussion, is we'll reserve the briefing on the hurricane update for Mr. Carpenter during council briefings. All right, with that, let's move to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And it's unanimous, Mary. We move on to approval of minutes. The minutes are on the screen and also at tab A. Can we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Mr. Gardner, I think we have a second from Mr. Connell. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was absent last meeting, so I would be abstaining.
Very good. And I would like to just say, I noted in the minutes, there are a tasker in there for the Economic Development Office from Ms. McLean, so from Mr. Jones. So let's take a look at that, make that be done. Any discussion? Nope. Let's move to a vote. All those in favor, excluding Mr. Tucker, signify by raising your hand. And the minutes are approved. We move now to a series of ordinances and new business. The first item is an ordinance, which is the second reading of an ordinance of the County Council to amend the county's official zoning map. Mr. Carpenter, we have it on the screen. Can you take us through it?
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in front of you tonight for second reading an ordinance to amend the county's official zoning map for approximately 3.74 acres of land owned by Ms. Patsy Miles. Currently, it's zoned RD2, seeking to be rezoned to GD, General Development. It has previously been in front of the Planning Commission, and they have unanimously recommended it to council.
Very good. Can we have a motion to approve this on the second reading?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tucker, second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Connell. Any discussion? Seeing that there is no discussion, we move quickly to a vote. All those in favor signify by raising your hand. And again, it passes unanimously on the second reading and moves forward to a third reading. We move now into some exciting new business, the first of which is a fire service data reporting. And recall that Mr. Connell, Mr. Gardner, and Mr. Jones, along with Chris and Chief Spitzer and all our volunteer firemen and Keith and all the crowd put together a significant amount of effort. But one thing was missing, and that was an agreed-upon database, which I believe we now have, which in my view, I think quantifies what we instinctively knew. But let's see what the council can be presented, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Carpenter to present. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, you have in your agenda packets data that was the result of the software package that has been implemented. I'm going to brief you on what is in the packet and some information as well from that. The first thing is I want to start with where the ad hoc committee ended, which is their interim report. And in that interim report, there's several items that they found and that they wanted to discuss. One was they determined there's a need for additional fire service personnel at the Blaney Fire Station and in the eastern portion of Kershaw County. However, more data is needed to determine exactly how many personnel and what is needed. The next finding was the need to implement an integrated reporting system, which was that data collection, and that as fire service expands, the need for a new location for EMS currently located there. From there, Mr. Chairman, several short-term solutions were reached. That short-term solutions were, as you see on the next slide, that we divide the county into reporting zones, 4 of them. The stations would be put in those reporting zones, that we retitle Keith Ray and Scott Wiles to chief and deputy chief. And you see the various items that we did. The most important part of that was the accurate reporting of fire calls due to the purchase of the emergency reporting software, which would give us accurate statistics. The reason why we need to do that is the previous system that we had, the way it was set up and the way it operated, it would and did result in double counting, triple counting of calls sometimes. So the data was never as accurate as it needed to be. So the packet you have are some detailed information from that software. And I want to go over some of that. The first slide I have is the countywide results by the incident type itself. What we can tell is that from when we started collecting this in March of this year, Kershaw County Fire Services had 788 total calls that they reported to. Of those, 162 were fires, 438 were rescue and EMS calls, and then the others were everything from service calls to good intention calls, which is checking up or helping someone with maybe a smoke alarm, down to severe weather calls. So 788 calls. Those calls we then broke down by station. You have every single station reported in your council packet, but I'm just going to focus on a couple of them for the purpose of this report. Now you see on that map the 4 zones that we've created, zone 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the way the stations are broken down into those. The first results that I'm going to go over are Blaney Fire Station, Blaney Fire District. Blaney had 230 of the 788 calls countywide in that time frame. You can see how those calls break down. We're now able to get into significant detail into the job our first responders and firemen are doing by department. So 230 calls. Of those 230 calls, again, a significant number of them were first response calls. Fortunately, there were not as many calls for fire, which you would expect in a modern community, that fire is not your overwhelming number of calls they're receiving. Now, if you look at that map of the 230 incidents, we show the number of reported incidents from the adjacent districts. So to the top it shows 88, and then to the bottom 74. So that means that there are 88 reported calls in Pine Grove and 74 in Doby's Mill. So that gives you a sense of that part of the county and where the calls are coming in from. The next one I'll highlight is Antioch.
Can you back up a second? Do you want to admit some questions as we move along?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
My first question is, how many of these were I-20 related? You know? Yeah, I'm just curious. I don't think it bears on the issue. Sorry I brought it up, but I would like to know that later on. Okay, thanks. Go ahead.
Okay. Antioch Fire. Antioch had 50 reported incidents in that time frame. Its adjacent counties, departments Shepherd and Charlotte Thompson, 42 and 31. So less disparity in the reporting of incidents in those counties in the eastern part as compared to Blaney. Again, most of these were responding to other issues than just fires. The next one, Buffalo Mount Pisgah. Now, Buffalo Mount Pisgah includes the Gates Ford substation. So it shows on the map as 4 departments, but Buffalo Mount Pisgah and Gates Ford are considered one department. Total of 73 incidents for them, 62 and 42 for their adjacent departments as reported. And then finally, Beaver Creek. Beaver Creek with a total of 28 reported incidents, and its adjacent departments of 22 and 27. What we're able to do with this software now is we're able to determine not only what types of calls we're responding to, we're able to determine who responded to the calls. We're able to break down significantly even the amount of time it takes to get to the calls. As Scott just indicated, Mr. Chairman, we can go in and we can figure out geographically and pull out information like I-20 as opposed to Lake Wateree kinds of calls and identify those kinds of hotspots. So from all that, there were some long-term conclusions that were reached. And those long-term conclusions were simply this: in order to accomplish what the ad hoc committee had started with in coming up with their findings, that a hub-and-spoke professional and volunteer hybrid system would be a desired system. And initially, what that would look like would be 2 full-time professionals and a part-time person serving the Blaney District and the western side of the county, and 7 part-time professionals serving the eastern side of the county. This would result in significantly greater level of service and protection to both sides of the county. Also, we would look to change the point system to better reward our dedicated volunteers so that they receive for their efforts and their commitment to this county. That, Mr. Chairman, those are the basic conclusions that were reached by staff in looking at these numbers. You have the detailed numbers in front of you. Staff is here. I turn it back to council for any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, Mr. Jones, please go ahead.
What about the cost? I didn't break that down. I noticed
Can you put it by the mic so we can hear? Sorry.
What about,
Okay.
thank you. What about the cost?
Right.
How do you break that? I know we have a limited amount that we can do if we were willing to do that now. We'd probably have to go to a referendum, I think, to get the other approved, would we not?
In order to add full-time personnel, we would have to identify a source of funds, yes, sir. The cost of the personnel would be, along with personnel would be about $400,000, with upfitting costs about another $30,000, total cost of about $430,000 in order to implement this proposal.
What we had pretty much, I think we had sort of committed, at least I did, was that one thing we were going to try to get a question for the referendum and do a referendum. Of course, there wouldn't be enough time to do that now with the general election coming up so quickly, correct?
Yes, sir.
Probably have to, Mr. Connell, look at a special election on that maybe next year.
Well, yes, sir. It could be part of the next year's process. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Jones has captured the issue precisely. This is going to cost something, resources. And in discussion with Ben, I'm not going to speak for him, and I asked Ben to pick it up from there, is we now need to deliberately have the staff crunch this thing into some options that are costed in some fashion. Ben, do you want to pick it up there?
Well, sure. I just had some comments initially. Just wanted to say thanks for those that stuck with and participated in the committee that we had. At times it seemed like a long and drawn-out process, but I feel really, really thankful for being involved in it because I'm actually seeing some results here, which is really encouraging. We purchased the software that we needed to. We got the right software at the right time, and now we have accurate information to base our investment decisions on. We made some organizational changes that made us a little bit leaner and more effective and efficient as an organization. Our training programs are improving as well. I just had some numbers to share, Mr. Chairman, to put things in context. I don't think there's any dispute that Camden Fire Department does a wonderful job and Lugol Fire Department does a wonderful job, and that they're funded at adequate levels to do that good job. So I'll just share a few of these numbers. Roughly, Lugol Fire Department serves about 8,000 people. That's the population. Their budget, which we recently voted on, is about $1.2 million. Camden Fire Department reports that they have about a $1.9 million budget and serve a population of about 7,030 people. If you take those populations out of Kershaw County as a whole, assuming about 66,000, the next census might be quite higher than that, but assuming about 66,000 people, our Kershaw County fire budget is about $1.1 million, and we're servicing about 50,000 people. And if you look at the other areas that we already kind of, I think, agree provide adequate fire service, we're working off of 1/3 the budget, and a large part of that is due to volunteers. So we've got to take better care of our volunteers, is my opinion, Mr. Chairman. It's challenging, though, in fire service to do that because you can't spend anything on a personnel cost or an operating cost unless it comes from a fire mill or gets approved by the voters. Even raising the fire mill to the maximum amount would only generate about $60,000 to $66,000. I think there are 9 mills there, and that wouldn't even purchase one full-time fireman or woman. So we might be able to use those funds if we had to take care of part-time folks, maybe increase the point system rates. Those are some of my thoughts on that. And then otherwise, yeah, we have to send it to the voters to figure out exactly what type of fire service do they want. You know, I sit in kind of a unique situation, I guess. My business is protected by Lugoff Fire Service, which I'm really thankful for. It's about, you know, a quarter mile away, and I'm happy to pay that millage rate because my establishment and the rental units we have are protected. But my house is also protected, but not by full-time fire service personnel. And it's a little bit of a dilemma because the training requirements are so challenging nowadays. You have to, say for example, I wanted to become a volunteer fireman. I'd have to go through 240 hours of training before I could even go to and participate in the first call. And as I understand it, that may not make me eligible to even drive a truck. Who with a young family is going to go and do something like that unless they actually have some incentive to do that? So overall, I think this data supports the conclusions and ideas and inclinations we had initially. We've got to get some full-time fire service at Blaney. We've got to do a better job throughout the county with supporting our volunteers. We've got to focus on the hub and spoke system in the eastern portion of the county and put some more part-time folks out there. And now it becomes a question of how do you fund it all.
What's the value of a mill for the fire department?
Fire department mill's about 120,000. Is that right? Does that ring a bell? Yeah, about
So when you say 60,000, we got less than a mill that we could actually do if we were willing to do that
Yes,
at this current time, unless we went
Yeah.
before the voters.
There you go. I would like to frame this and let the sense of, you know, we've served this up not as a motion, but for discussion. And I'd like to frame this for the staff and tell them now that we have the data and the background that Mr. Jones and Connell and Mr. Gardner have brought to us with the help of the team in the audience, frame it for the staff. And I see on the board some basics that should be framed in language if we're going to do a referendum, as Mr. Jones is suggesting, or in a budget cycle with a millage increase if there's not much rattle room there. Do we have enough information for our staff to now cost this and bring it to us in a retreat and maybe budget workshop session? Just rhetorical question, everybody weigh in on that. Do we have enough information on the board to express our intent as a council for the staff to bring it into us for a vote?
As a member,
suggestions.
Mr. Jones has got it.
As a member of county council, I mean, let me just say this. I think we have enough information to go ahead and let them come back with us so we can frame a question and within the frame of what information we do have.
Yeah. Mr. Bozard, sir.
Well, you're making that in the form of suggestion that they come back, they come back with us with options.
Costed option.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that.
I think you got some questions on this.
Mr. Gardner.
I just a comment that may lead to a question. The fact that as I look through the incident reports here, and so many of the responses and the incidents that we have are medical assists, do you think the fact that as we've expanded EMS and when we get our other 2 stations up and running, will that reduce the burden on the fire service on those calls?
No, sir, because, for example, if it's a vehicle, they're normally going to have to send a fire truck for a vehicle accident anyway. So a significant number of those, back to the chairman's question of I-20, are going to be vehicle fires or potential of a vehicle fire. Right. So that's why you'll see fire trucks responding to most vehicle issues.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clear that up.
Mr. Tucker.
Would not make a difference.
Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question would be to Mr. Carpenter, but let me first start by saying thanks to the committee, Chairman Connell and Councilmember Jones and Gardner for their ad hoc committee, along with the staff and all of the folks that support that with Mr. Carpenter. I'm a little bit behind on all of this because, you know, of course, we were doing our ad hoc committee and had some other things going on, so I'm a little lost. So my first question, Mr. Carpenter, is on your short-term solutions, where are we? What we still have left to do out of the 10 bullets you gave us?
Thank you, Mr.
Let's go back on that slide, Danny.
Basically, they're done. These were items that we could
Short-term.
accomplish in the course of the budget year. So these are items that when they were, when the subcommittee, when the ad hoc committee finished its work, these were tasks that were assumed by county staff, and they have accomplished them.
So we're good and either have already implemented these or in the process of doing
Yes, sir.
is what you're telling me. Okay. All right, and then explain to me on the change point system to better reward dedicated volunteers. I'm kind of lost on what we're talking about there.
Go to the last slide.
Thank you, Mr.
Currently, the way the point system works is the county allocates $75,000 for a pool. It's been that much for years.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure when we went to 75, but it's been 75 for a long time. As volunteers respond to calls, they earn points. Each period of time, they'll add up however many points there are, divide that into the amount of money, and that's how much you get per point. So it varies. If you have fewer people participating, they get more per point. If you have less people, or more people, then you have less per point. So what this suggestion would do is a couple things. First of all, it could increase the pool itself, put more money into it, so there's more money available for the volunteers. And B, it could also take into consideration the various level of training that the volunteers have accomplished. Currently, there's no distinction for a volunteer whether they're a firefighter 2 or a support firefighter. A point's a point. That doesn't really reflect the fact that 240 hours is what you have to do just to get your minimum training out of the way. So there's no real incentive, if you want to use that term, for a volunteer to keep going up the ladder as opposed to showing up to fires and supporting and assisting in the background. So that would take us in a direction of perhaps coming up with a system where you would have a different level per point based on what level of firefighter you were. So the more certifications you had, then the more a point would be worth to you. So that would recognize their commitment in the context of training, but it would also still be able to recognize the commitment just by showing up. So that's what we're referring to.
Okay, and is this a common system throughout the state, or is this something that we're trying to be?
I would defer that.
And the reason why I'm asking these questions is because I think throughout the state, everybody's having the same problem with having to do this 6 weeks worth of training.
Throughout the nation,
And-
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, well, thank you, Ben. We're having problems not only getting them trained, but retaining them and so forth and so on. And I've found out throughout, whether it's government or private sector, when you reward people for hard work, they have a tendency to do it and do it correctly and be good at it.
Mr. Jones.
And Mr. Tucker, to your comment and question, you're exactly right. If I'm not mistaken, I think we are actually falling behind Lee County when it comes to supporting our volunteers. You know, we need to step it up. We need to do more, and I'm glad to hear that we're having that discussion. I've also spoke with many volunteers from throughout the county system, not just West Wateree, but Antioch, Bethune area, Charlotte Thompson, and they all have expressed to me what we're talking about tonight is compensation for their volunteer time.
Yeah, can I ask
Yes,
if it's appropriate to say not just reward, having been in this business some time in a different uniform, recruit, train, retain, and reward. So it's not just
I like that, Chairman.
reward. What we want to do is fill out our volunteer system and increase their training level and justify that with the emoluments that grease that wheel. So if we could add those 4 R's, that would help me a little bit. Is that okay with you?
I like that.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry I interrupted. Go
No,
ahead.
no, you're fine. I was just going to make the comment in reference to Mr. Carpenter again. I know council does policy, and we do, the hard work. So I say that, and one council member speaking up here that give us as many options that y'all are willing to live by. Do not put an option on the table that you think that we just want to hear, and then we choose that one, and then you can't live by it. I'll say that. I have no reason to think that you would do any less, but I must state that. And then I would also ask my colleagues, as these options come back, there will have to be tough decisions and commitments if you truly want to do something. I'm sitting up and listening about referendums, increases in taxes. You know, it's good to talk and discuss, but we really, really have to think, is this something that we're going to do, or are we just going to do like we do studies sometime? Recognize the problem, talk about it, and then put it up on the shelf for book life.
Mr. Tucker, let me say this on that. We're absolutely going to do something. Our fire service needs help. You know, if there's a structure fire outside Lugoff Fire District or outside Camden Fire District, we have a fine chief, a fine fire marshal, assistant fire marshal, but they need to be able to recruit and retain. And I think the things we're talking about is minimal compared to the results we'll get after we do it.
I recognize Mr. Bozard.
Just to clarify a little bit, we're asking staff to bring recommendations back to us, right? That's what your comments were just a little bit
Costed
ago.
recommendations.
Cost and?
Costed. Money
Now,
applied to a recommendation.
Paying for that, it comes from this council, right?
That would be correct.
Okay, I just want to clarify that.
Well, Mr. Jones said it might be a referendum, and that's clearly
That would be up to us to decide.
And that's
though.
clearly what Mr. Connell was talking about as well.
The main thing is they're going to bring us recommendations back, and then it's up to us to figure out how to finance it.
Well, yeah, and if just getting a sense here, I'm going to get Mr. Jones right away, is perhaps bring it to the retreat, and then we take it into a budget working session.
I agree.
Mr. Jones, go right ahead.
And I agree with that comment, Mr. Chairman, about the the retreat. You know, these volunteers, when they go out and they fight these fires, they're also assisting our coroner's office and other folks out there. I mean, it's a team effort. And I see we have a deputy coroner here tonight, and appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, Ben, go ahead.
One thing I want to make sure that does not get lost in this is the benefit to the taxpayer. Beyond life safety issues, additional protection for family and personal belongings, there's the ISO rating. And the reason I took an interest in this is it's my hope. Just take, for example, Lugoff Fire District. I saw a direct benefit from improvements Lugoff Fire District made to their facilities, training, and equipment because the property insurance rates on a building went down, and it was a savings in my pocket. Likewise, someone's homeowner's insurance can reduce if an ISO rating can increase. And we've been trying to target things that we can do in the county with some of these recommendations that would allow your homeowner's insurance rates to decrease. And my hope is that we can identify a sweet spot where you get a net savings. If we go to the taxpayers and say it might be $5 or $6 per house per year, will result in a $15 to $20 savings per year on your homeowner's insurance. So not only do you get better fire service, but you're actually able to save money on your homeowner's insurance. I just want to make sure that we remember that's one of the purposes here too.
Let me restate what I thought I heard from Mr. Tucker, and as I was telling Steve Zobel over a glass of wine last week, every plan, when you bring in a plan for a decision, you bring in how many options, Steve? 3. I'll tell you about that later, Jimmy. You have to shoot your finger off to have 3. But the point there is I think we're now beginning to shape for Mr. Carpenter and the team to come in with various options, and those options can vary by solutions, and they can vary by how you address the resources in terms of a referendum and taxes and so on. So we need to have a whole bunch of options so that we can choose. After you bring in 3 options, Vic, when you bring those in, we'll choose number 4, okay? Other discussion? I want to ask Mr. Carpenter, do you have enough information, or do you want us to flesh some other things out?
I think we have plenty, sir.
Okay. All right. Can we close that discussion? Ben, are you happy with it as our chair on that particular thing? And we have the team out here, so let's get started. I would think we'll move to the next item on the agenda. Thank you indeed. This is extremely important. Item number 2 on new business is a discussion and vote of dividing county council travel budget proportionately by number of council members. I believe we have an attachment at D. Can you get it up on the screen, Danny? And I'll turn it over to Mr. Jones to open it up. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the county council. I'd like to make a motion on that behalf. Discussion and a vote divided the county council travel budget proportionally by number of council members.
And is there a timeline to implement, Jimmy?
Well, it looks like I don't have any interest from any of my colleagues to even discuss it. That's a shame. Mr. Chairman, yeah, it was
Motion would be like in the next budget cycle?
Well, it would be in the next budget cycle,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, and you can also make a second too, I believe. But anyway, the effectiveness with what this would do is start next year. It wouldn't have anything to do with this year.
Okay. So we have a motion from Mr. Jones to apportion by council member the travel budget proportionately and to make that an item during the next budget year.
Mr. Chairman, I was really hoping from my colleagues that I'd get a second just to discuss this about the travel expenditure. So thank you very much for your time.
We have a second? Okay, I see we have a second, Jimmy, and I, as a matter of practice, just don't second as the chair.
And I understand that.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We'll move now to council briefings. And Mr. Jones, you lead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Actually, let me start by just, hold on, let me pull this up one second. I want to remind everybody, excuse me, that on September 22nd, 2018, there would be the Revolutionary Run, and we had talked about that at the last county council meeting, so I just want to kind of bring that back up so everybody could hear it. And I do want to say this to Mr. Carpenter making the agenda for the retreat. I'd like to have the travel expense put on the list for the retreat.
Very good.
And my reason for that, since this is council briefing, I'm not going to elaborate on. I'm just going to mention a couple of things. You know, we currently have one lump sum of $11,000 appropriated for travel, and any one council member could conceivably spend $7,000 or more without raising any red flags. By allocating the travel budget evenly between the various districts, we can keep better track of the account of funds, and this equates to good management and transparency. Also, any one council member not using their travel allowance could transfer their unused funds to another who needed it. And this can easily be done by placing the request on the county council's agenda for a line item transfer. And I was also going to ask council tonight, and I didn't get the opportunity to do it, I was going to ask them to think about, and it only makes sense that to tell the public what we've been doing on any trips when we pay for them, when the citizens pay for them. You know, if any of us take a trip on the taxpayer's expense, I feel like within 2 county council meetings, that council member should make a report and summarize the trip to the citizens. And we don't do that. And I don't think there's any ill intent by us not doing that, but we used to do it many years ago, Mr. Tucker. Mr. Kelly was very good about giving a report, going to Hilton Head or whatever, or going to Washington, meeting with Ralph Norman. But as I said, I've been on council 12 years, and during those many of those years, we did that. I just think this brings sunshine and transparency to the way we do business. And, you know, I looked at the travel account, And folks, I'll be honest with you, it's all lumped in together. You just really can't tell who's doing what or who's spending what. And let me say this, I don't think there's a council member up here that has done anything wrong. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying we need to be and do a little bit better when it comes to keeping records on each of us as to how much money we spend, what we do. And I don't think if this county council so sees fit, if we haven't got something planned for somebody to go to Washington or somebody to go to Hilton Head, I just don't think we ought to pay for another agency sending us up there. That's just my opinion. And we've done that in the past as well. But I'll tell you this, we'll talk about it more in the retreat, and I just really hope that you folks will consider it for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Tucker?
Very briefly, I just want to say I'm looking at a couple new little young faces out here. Don't look around like you don't know who I'm talking to. Welcome, young people, ladies and gentlemen. Always good to see young folks in the audience. And I want to say, I know Mr. Carpenter is going to, that wasn't for you, Jim. I know Mr. Carpenter is going to brief us on the hurricane update, but I want to wish all of you well and continue to pray that we're able to escape as much as possible. And please, please, please heed all the warnings that are being told to you and convince others to go with you. There's nothing more valuable than human life. And so I just want to encourage you to do the things that this well-prepared emergency team is putting together to save lives. We can replace all this property, but we can't replace you. Even if you have a twin, it's still not you. That concludes my report.
Mr. Gardner.
Just, again, just on that, if you were here for Hugo, you know what these things are capable of. So, heed the warnings.
Mr. Bozard. Al.
Thank you. I have several things. In relationship to these trips, in the last 12 years, I'll go back 12 years because that's the longest anybody's been on council. In the last 12 years, there's been 3 people that's going on trips. Mr. Turner, Mr. Burns, and myself. The rest of them has never been on a trip paid by the county, except for Hilton Head, and everybody went on that. So,
not everybody, sir.
This, I don't know what brought it up, but I did make the trip to Washington. This past week, I was out there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. It was a trip that was set up by the Intergovernmental Affairs Office at Washington. It was for all South Carolinians. We talked about issues that affected South Carolina. And before I went, I met with Mr. Carpenter, I met with the Alpha Center, and I met with about 4 other different people, finding issues that affect South Carolina, even to the judges. The tariff was one subject, the drug problem was one subject, and there was some more that I brought up later on in the transportation studies that we had in 2 areas of the county, which I think possibly we might have found some money for. I give the information over to Vic, and Vic is going to find that out in the next week or so. But it was a good trip. We had a tour of the White House on early in the morning, and then from 1 to 4 we was in a conference with different secretaries and folks that work for the president. The director of the Intergovernmental Affairs Office was with us, the special assistant to the president and the press secretary was there. General Mick Zakis, I guess it's Zakis. He used to be the secretary of education here in South Carolina until he moved on. Mick Mulvaney, the Department of Agricultural Secretary, briefed us, and the Department of Transportation briefed us, and we did get to ask questions back to them, and that's what, and excuse me, I left one out, Kellyanne Conway. She briefed us on drugs. And it was a very good conference all in all, and if anything, we did make some contacts up there, and if possible, maybe some way that we can pay for one of these studies that we've done on transportation throughout Kershaw County. But all in all, they did know, because I told them, that Kershaw County was the all-American city. And I left no stone unturned doing that. There was 175 to 180 people there out of South Carolina. There was mayors there. There was some representatives out of the low country there, but mainly they were chairmen and councilmen throughout South Carolina. And Lancaster County outdid everybody. They had 5 at that conference. We had 1, just 1, because Mr. Burns got an invite to it too, but he decided that he would let me go and save money. So we do look out after the money, and I appreciate that. Next item I have, Mr. Burns, is that we have been talking with some of these water companies, and I talked with Lugoff, and in the same time, Mr. Carpenter was talking with Camden, and we've talking these water companies about putting the All-American City flag on their water towers. The city of Camden has agreed to put one on, and Mr. Carpenter has sent letters to all the other water companies, and Lugoff says that they are entertaining the idea highly, but they have not given us a commitment, and we, like I said, we sent them a letter, but we have not heard back on the letters that we sent to the other water companies. That's Cassett, Bethune,
Rural.
Tiger, Alligator. Alligator. That's close. Alligator Water Company, and we're hoping that they will participate in it and help us out on that, and especially that one over in Lugoff, because that big water tower, everybody sees it from the high school, they see it from the interstate, they can see it from anywhere you look, just about. We'd love to have that one. We had a show scheduled through the Alpha Center this coming Saturday. It was called The Four Corners of the Earth, Four Corners of the World, excuse me. They had acts from all over South Carolina, North Carolina, and some up as far as Virginia. And my band being one of the acts, but they got canceled because of the weather. So it's going to be rescheduled sometime up in the spring. And my last one, Mr. Chairman, is Mr. Carpenter, can you tell where we stand on the county signs that you were going to look at and come back with some recommendation?
Yes, so we've met with SCDOT, with Brian, they're very amenable to working with us and putting the signs up. They'll allow us to put it on their signs. We're coming up with an image that we'll all agree to, and then we'll start putting them up.
Thank you. That concludes my briefing.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Connell.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just want to express gratitude and thanks again to those who participated and served on the Fire Service Committee. Mr. Jones, Mr. Gardner, Mayor Emmons, those from Lugoff Fire District, the fire staff that we have. I really feel like it's paying off, all the work that we put in. So I appreciate everybody's involvement. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I'll close that very quickly. First of all, Peggy Spivey, our great administrator of the detention center, made national news with some of her personnel programs. That just shows you the quality of people that Vic Carpenter hires, retains, and promotes, and I'm sure we'll do this as well with the fire study. Secondly, Bethune Rodeo was completed. It made $4,500. And now we've got Johnny Outlaw at Antioch, about to have one in 2 weeks. It ought to be great. The rec service has got their jamboree coming up for the youth fall program on the 22nd. Each of you have a copy of that. And also, there's been much in the media about ideas from the school district, and I assure you that Shane Robbins and my counterpart, Chairman Smith, and I are talking along with Vic Carpenter. We're working as a team to address these difficult resource officers and other resource issues that we have in the county, and we're going to solve these problems, but we're going to solve them working them in a professional and business-like way. And I know you members of the council feel the same way, to grasp these difficult issues and move forward. Lastly, I understand we're going to have a C&W station and WPUB, and I think they're going to play, the first song they're going to play is my personal favorite, Dead Skunk in the Middle of the Road. With that, I turn over to Vic Carpenter for his briefing.
Mr. Chairman, members of council, a few items. I'll start off with just an update of what the county's doing and the hurricane, of course, Hurricane Florence. Just to kind of show you this thing changes daily, and if you have been following it, you notice that the track has changed now, the projected track. Still coming ashore, North Carolina, but it was projected to track up through Raleigh and into Virginia. It's now projected to track towards Asheville. That means that Saturday, Sunday, it'll be north of us, dumping significant amounts of rain if it follows this current track. So Duke has been emptying the reservoirs in the Catawba watery system. You may have noticed the water river is high. It'll probably get higher if it follows this track. Duke is well on top of what they need to be doing to ensure that the system is safe and healthy, but they do discourage people from getting into the river or the lake coming up. The county itself, want to reassure you of what we're actually monitoring this situation. As you can tell, we met with, of course, all county staff and our partner agencies in this county to ensure that we're ready to go for whatever happens. We are not considered a directly impacted county. We're an inland county. None of our shelters are anticipated to open. Should we need to open them, Camden High School would be the first one, with Lugoff High School being the second one. Food for the Soul does offer right now the ability for people to stay if if they do decide to leave their homes. Food for the Soul is also our special needs shelter. Special needs meaning individuals with health issues, people who need to have respirators, people who need to have various dialysis, what have you. So Food for the Soul is the shelter designated for that. The county is running, starting tomorrow, a hurricane hotline. You have passed that to you. The media will have it. This number is 803-425-7242. Please encourage anybody and everybody who have questions about anything non-emergency related to call this number. We do not need, we cannot afford to have too many people calling 911 when there are actual emergencies out there if they're calling it for non-emergency questions. A non-emergency question would be losing your power. You can call this number, you can call the electric companies. Do not call 911 if your power goes out. There will be power outages if it follows a track like this. So please discourage people from calling 911 for power outages, lost animals, or anything like that. You will see tomorrow morning we'll be back in here. This becomes the Emergency Operations Center. If the storm does track towards us, we will go closer to activating an EOC. We're at a level 4 right now. We get closer to a 3 and a 2, we'll start manning it. That means we'll have full-time people here 24/7, keeping an eye, making sure. County crews, again, will be out clearing roads. If the storm does reach a level, they're saying there could be some sustained winds of tropical storm force. You will see no emergency personnel out once winds hit 35 miles an hour sustained. No electric people, no phone people, no ambulances. They do not go out once the winds hit 35 miles. They have to, you just have to wait in place, and then the crews will come to you as soon as the winds go down, so it's safe. So rest assured that county personnel, departments that are not considered frontline first responders have a role to play in an emergency like this. Our assessor's office, our parks and recreation, our building maintenance, they're all given duties and assignments. Our code enforcement, they're all working. They're either out there working to, again, clean, clear, and save people, to assess damages, to go out and come up with the understanding of where the most critical needs are so we can send those resources there. Volunteers from county employees, such as the library, will be manning the phones. So all county departments pitch in. It's all hands on deck when a storm or a situation like this comes. You're welcome to ask any questions. You can, again, the hotline number will be manned with information, people from outside. When we had the floods in 2015, the number of calls we received from people outside of the county trying to find out if it was safe to come to the county. where they could stay, where they could eat. Those are the kinds of questions that we answer and we're prepared to answer. Moving on from that, Mr. Chairman, members of council, just a few items.
Can we just
Okay, sir.
pause?
I'm sorry.
Questions from council on the hurricane?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir.
I just got a knot in my stomach. Let me read you, this is to you, Mr. Carpenter, on the hurricane. It says, as of tomorrow, September the 12th, 2018, Food for the Soul's day service will be canceled. This includes breakfast, lunch, laundry services, and shower services. Nighttime shelter services will continue from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I'm appreciative of that, but why are we canceling the meals and services to the people that needs them the most? Why can't we pair? We're not going to get hit tomorrow night. I have read nothing nor talked to you that says we're going to hit tomorrow night. That's Thursday night. And I'm concerned about the folks that really needs these services.
Mr. Tucker, that was a decision they made. I'll be glad to follow up with them for you.
Please.
Okay.
Because we just put them a significant amount in the budget to do things, but not to stop doing other things.
I'll follow up. Yes, sir.
Please.
Okay.
I agree.
Mr. Jones, other comments? Do you have what you need to get the job done?
Absolutely.
Do you have appropriate representation at your daily ops center meetings?
Yes, sir.
From all throughout the county?
We had DSS, Food for the Soul United Way, the school district. We have the electric companies, the cities, Elgin, Bethune, Camden. Everybody is participating. Lugoff Fire, the Sheriff's Office, City Police Department, Highway Patrols, SCDOT. Those are all the entities who are coming right now.
Yeah.
If we go to a level 3 or higher, then we'll have embedded with us people from the state as well. National Guard, Army Reserve, or EMD will also be embedded with us.
Yeah, Mr. Bozard.
And we reached out to the ham operators. They gave us an excellent briefing last time. And
I'll follow up and see if we have. I know the Red Cross was also one of the agencies that's represented here. We definitely won't leave them sitting on the sidelines.
thank you.
Okay, others? One last thing, and just deserves, we had tragic loss of life there on 5 and 20 Creek, or 25 Mile Creek, but for Chiefs and the rest of the Lugoff Fire Department, we would have lost a second person. So first of all, our firemen and our volunteer and our first responders are amazing. And secondly, we don't want to make them heroes again by people disobeying signs that are put up by the Sheriff Department and other people, such as curfews, which then put their lives in danger and the lives of our first responders. Unacceptable, and I would just like the media to help us push the line that says, obey, listen to, and heed warning signs. It's meant to save your life. Okay, back to you, Vic.
Any questions the council has, you are always, as always, encouraged to reach out, and we'll answer as quickly as we can. Moving on from that, a few items. The only cancellation at this point related to that, the Clean Community Commission was scheduled to meet Thursday. They have canceled that. They'll be seeking to reschedule next week, weather permitting. Events coming up, the senior golf tournament for Parks and Rec will be Friday the 21st at White Pines Golf Course. Apparently, Parks and Rec considers anyone over the age of 50 to be a senior.
They're like AARP, aren't they?
I take a little offense at that, but you know, if they're trying to pad their numbers, I guess.
Thank you, Shane.
So about everybody but Mr. Connell on council is eligible to play in that. Also coming up, October 6th, Touch a Truck will be held. That is sponsored by the Parks and Rec and Junior Welfare League. We'll be holding it at the River Parcel this year. And then October 13th, Yak in the River. Those are the events coming up, Mr. Chairman. That's my report.
Okay, Attorney?
Nothing to report, Mr. Chairman.
And there's no need for an executive session. I think I'll be ready to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tucker, a second from Mr. Gardner. Any discussion? Let's be safe out there. Let's vote on that. All those in favor of adjourning, so signify. And it's unanimous, and we're adjourned. Be safe out there, people.